Are you an athlete who would like to maximize your performance to succeed at the top level? Head on over to my website at jacobandre.com and book a free 15-minute discovery call to discover if and how I can help you. G'day and welcome to the Mind Your Body Show, episode number 69. I'm your host, Jacob Andre, and today I'm talking to Anthony Vallejo. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So one of the first things I like to ask is, what do we interrupt in your day today?
Well, look, I was actually helping out in the Michael Long Cup today. Early start. I think I got there about 7:30, so it's been good. Get out to do this while it's nice and hot out there at about 1 o'clock. So it's been a good little break.
So obviously you've got a very long, we'll get into this, history in sport, having played yourself and now coaching, working with different young people, as well as the current coach of the St. Mary's Football Club here in Darwin. Do you have a vested interest in what's happening down there at the Michael Long Cup?
Oh, look, yes, I do. Like I'm a local bloke from Darwin that's come through the local ranks at St. Mary's. I play for Milner Primary School. I played for St. Paul's Primary back in the day. When we were playing at Allahabad Oval. I just want to give things back. I just think kids up here miss out on a lot in terms of sport. Whether that be good coaching, good facilities, things like that. So I was lucky enough, to spend a little bit of time in a state when I was growing up, getting some quality coaching in me. I've got two kids that have come through the programs, both in soccer, athletics, football and basketball. I want to give something back. So that's why I'm down there. I'm not looking at recruiting kids for Saints or anything like that. It's just a matter of if they can take something out of what I'm offering. It may only be one or two little things. I just think it's something more blokes should do up here, give something back.
Yeah, I like it. You mentioned that you grew up in Darwin. Let's go right back to the early days. Tell me, Where did it all begin? And tell me the Anthony Vallejo story.
Yeah, I don't think it's common knowledge, but I was born and grew up in a place called Daly River, probably 3 hours outside of Darwin. I'm the eldest son.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, that's where I was born and raised. I unfortunately don't get back there as much as I used to, just with work and kids and things like that. But that's where I spent, from, like I said, when I was born to early high school days, when my parents sent me into St. John's, just for, to get a better education. There was only a primary school out at Daly at that stage. So both my parents, were immigrants to Australia. My dad came across as a chaperone from Spain. He had two sisters that were nuns, and they were posted to an Aboriginal community called in Clontarf in the top of WA. So he went out there when he came across he did 2 years of military service and then moved out there just to chaperone his two sisters because they came by boat. And he wanted my grandparents were farmers and he wanted something different. So he was one of 12. So he did that. He came across to Australia back then. Mum's East Timorese. 75 when Indonesians invaded East Timor. She unfortunately had to leave. And her and my cousins, I've got, she's one of 11. So they all had to flee on a boat, came to Australia, and they had a processing unit for, Timorese people out of Daly, and that's where she was. My dad moved from Clontarf to Daly. He was a stockman. He sort of became a stockman and moved out to Daly River, and that's where they met. And I was born in 78. So, out at Daly River. Sport's a big part of schooling in Darwin, in the territory, and especially, in an Aboriginal mission. We played footy, we played soccer, we played anything we could get our hands on. I reckon when I was in year 7, my dad wanted me to, something else in life, I suppose. And he shipped me off to St. Paul's Primary. I did a year there, 2 years there, and then went to St. John's. And while I was at St. John's, we met Helen Smith, who was the secretary of the St. Mary's Football Club, and she got me over to St. Mary's, and sort of went from there.
That's crazy. So when you say your dad shipped you off to St. Paul's, were you with the family when you went to that primary school?
No, my brother Iggy's 2 years younger, and then my sister's 2 years younger than Iggy. So I moved in with my auntie and uncle in Phoenix Street in Nightcliff. They owned a Chinese takeaway in Nightcliff, so I lived there for a couple of years. Went to St. Paul's, and then I reckon 3 years later, Mum and Dad, when it was Iggy's turn to go to high school, they decided to move the whole family up. And that was a pretty big shock because that's all they knew was Daly River. We obviously made lifelong friends in Daly, and we still keep in touch with lots of them. Visit mum all the time. But yeah, so it was just something for us kids. Mum and dad are really big on the next generation achieving more than the previous one, so they wanted something out of their lives. Both of them came to Australia with pretty much the clothes on their back, and they wanted something for us. So yeah, we came to Darwin, and yeah, it was probably the best move they ever did.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of successful footballers that have come out of St. Paul's. What was it like going to St. Paul's with what I imagine would have been a lot of sporty kids?
Oh, it was unreal. So yeah, unfortunately we were the only ones that played for Saints. There was a strong connection. We met the Motlop family there, and they're really good family friends of ours. There's heaps of them. I was the same age as Shannon Motlop, so we're good mates. And yeah, we were at primary school, and then high school at St. John's. Iggy, my brother, was the same year as Daniel, so they're pretty tight. A lot of them, John Bonson, all these sort of types. Robbie Matt from Buffalo's days. So there was heaps of footy players. Our footy team was really, really good. And, we had a strong relationship with Milner down the road. Some years they couldn't field a team and some years we couldn't field a team. So we always combined. That's where I met Brenton Toy. He was playing at Milner. And, we've been lifelong friends ever since, So, yeah, it really sport has driven us. I know Iggy tells a story, through the St. Mary's Footy Club. That's where he met his wife, Deborah. We owe everything up to sport. Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. Are you an Aussie rules footballer who would like to maximise your performance to succeed at the top level? My Australian Rules Football Dynamic Group Coaching Program is a 12-phase program that has been curated from my 15 plus years working as a strength and conditioning coach with local footballers right through to AFLW players at Adelaide and Richmond. To get instant access to my Australian Rules Football Dynamic Group Coaching Program, simply head on over to jacobandre.com/Australian-rules-football. What was it like then? So that was St. Paul's. What was it like at St. John's? Because I can imagine that St. John's was, it would have been extremely sporty. What was life like there going to school?
Yeah, they had a boarding house back then, which was thriving. That's talking about footy production lines. Back in the day, St. John's was the place to be. All the longs, and that's where we when we went there, we were introduced to the St. Mary's Footy Club, because everyone played for Saints that went to St. John's. All the Riolis. It was fantastic, and it was a real. Every Friday we'd play a footy game, and it was just unbelievable how good our side was. Things have changed a little bit. I know, school footy up here is non-existent at the moment. It's good to see that it's actually coming back. And pride in your schools. Like I said, I've got 2 kids that go to boarding school in Melbourne, and school sport is huge in Melbourne. It's unbelievable. It's pretty much a business. We went and watched my son play. He was going to Xavier, and they played Halberry, and just the bus after bus, like massive buses just coming in, dropping kids off. I just had never seen anything like it. It was St. John's was an experience. It was a great time there. Yeah.
I definitely want to talk more about your kids and their school and sporting experience, but let's stick with you for now. So then what did you do after school? What was the next step when you left school?
Yeah, I was lucky enough. I spoke to a few AFL clubs. Unfortunately, I was told I was going to get drafted. I was one of those kids that didn't get drafted on draft night. And I was told to move interstate to see how I went. So I moved to Adelaide. There was a few St. Mary's boys in those days that went down there. So I had an under-18s coach called Marty Christensen, who was playing at Woodville West Torrens. It was a tough choice. I was good mates with Peter Burgoyne, and he was playing at Port Adelaide. So it was a tough choice between the two. So I ended up going to Woodville. Spent 3 seasons down there. It was a bit of a culture shock, cold weather, big city. I'd never moved out of home before, away from my parents for a while. So, having to cook for yourself, all this sort of stuff was a bit of a shock. Lasted 3 years, and then the call of, St. Mary's got me back. The dream of getting drafted was over, I thought, even though I think I was 21. So I moved back home. Yeah.
So what was that like? What was that disappointment like, I suppose? Because I know I've met a couple of boys who have been expecting to get drafted and then not, and they go in different directions. What was that like for you?
It was a massive disappointment. It was a bit of a shock, to be honest. I I reckon my first, I played in an under-18s grand final, played senior footy. My first, I think it was 23 games at senior footy. We didn't lose a game. So you're on this high. I'd won a senior flag. It's funny. It's a funny story. My boss now, Jared Neesham, actually was coach of Fremantle Dockers. He actually came to my house with the recruiting manager, and he had a massive day. Like him and my dad had a few beers, and they were pretty much blind, telling me that he was going to draft me in a couple of weeks' time. And it didn't eventuate. So it's a massive shock, And I bring it up with him all the time. He's my boss now, so it's sort of a good thing. But at least he remembered me. So it was a massive shock. And then moving away, you're trying your hardest, but you go from this big fish in a little pond to this massive, Adelaide it's not the biggest city, but it's massive. Where in Darwin, there's probably 15 to 20 blokes that go to training, so it's very unlikely you're going to miss out. Where when I moved to Adelaide, there was, I reckon, it was under 19s back, or 17s back then. You had about 80 blokes, and they were cutting blokes every 2 weeks. So the anxiety levels would go up every Friday when the coach would come and give 5 blokes a tap on the shoulder. So it actually teaches you a lot of things, which like good lessons still today. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your time when you then came back to Darwin playing with St. Mary's. How many games have you played? Who have you played under? What was it like playing at St. Mary's?
Yeah, like I said, it was, growing up in Daly River, like my parents worked for the Catholic church up here. So Saints was the only team we actually went for. We knew all the Saints players. We'd go to Gardens Oval and watch them play, all the Longs, all the Riolis, all the Duns. They were the best team going around. So when it was our turn to play for them, it was, like I didn't have a brother or a dad that actually played for Saints. So we sort of went in there, no one knew who we were these, like these kids that were from Daly River that, aren't Indigenous, but they were from Daly. They're living in town now and they want to have a kick. Dad would always be there, like picking us up, dropping us off, doing the waters and stuff. And it was interesting. Like I said, we didn't have any real, connection to the club apart from we wanted to get in there and have a crack. We pride ourselves on being hardworking. Dad would, like I said, be there from back in those days. You'd under 14s would start at 9 and the seniors would be at 4. He'd be there all day running water for whatever grade wanted him to run water for. And that's what, I think we sort of got that name. They're Dom's kids. Dom was there all the time, all day. That was my dad. It was my first Premier League coach was John Taylor. He's probably the greatest coach going around. I remember the day he told us we were playing seniors. So me and Brenton Toy, we grew up, from primary school, and then we made our debuts together, along with Peter Burgoyne, all in the same year. He sort of said, you've got 3 games. I don't care if you don't get a kick in any of them, but you've got 3 games to show us what you've got. So that was our introduction under John. The year after, John retired and Jamie Thomas took over as a coach. And I played every game that year. We won a flag. Like I said, I didn't lose a game. I think it was a season and a half, and we lost to Waratahs I think just before the finals. And we had blokes like Mick Athanasia, Noel Long, and they called an urgent meeting. And I was like, we've lost 1 game. Like I just didn't understand what was going on. We've lost 1 game in almost 2 years, and they've called. I remember talking to Brenton about it because I think I picked him up. We're in the car, and I was like, what are they going to be talking about? I don't understand. And it was literally, we're at Mick's house. It all started off fun and jokes, and then he literally got us in a circle, and he and Noel went around the group and just, this is how you're going, mate. And they would just tell you the truth. It was like the harshest review like you'd ever. And I remember going home going, holy shit. Like, imagine if we lose a couple of games, what's going to happen? And we went through and won the season that year. But they were the benchmark. So the standards, and every generation's the same, I suppose. And I do it to the kids now. Like, back in my day, the ball never touched the ground, but it literally didn't. Like, we'd sit on the hill at Murrah number 1 there and watch the A-grade play. My dad used to make us sit there and watch him train, and the ball would never touch the ground. Like, it would just fling from one end to the other. Just the pride they had and the respect for each other, and not muck up kicks, and it was ridiculous. And that's one thing like I'm trying to instill into boys now. But it's hard. It's really hard when you're coaching kids these days, and it's a challenge I have. Yeah.
Yeah, what I really liked from what you just said was that you had said that your dad or your parents wanted, each generation to have more opportunities and be better than the next. And, you come in where you don't have a name like Long or Rioli or Dunn into the St. Mary's family and club. And then you guys, like Vallejo is just a name that's so synonymous now with the St. Mary's Football Club. So you have done essentially what your parents wanted, and that is, and that's just in one small area of your life, which is football. You've now, your kids can then go through and go, oh yeah, that's Iggy and Chopper's kids, like you now have that name firmly tied to the St. Mary's Football Club. How does that make you feel?
Oh, look, it's something we look back on now that both me and Iggy aren't playing. Like Saints is obviously a great club. They've got a great hall, and they've got those honour boards, and that's something no matter. I'm there every Thursday doing the meat tray. Every time I go back, you just get drawn looking at the board of, the years, the Premiership, who won best and fairest that year, the leading goal kicker. And they've actually updated it with, games played and coached and stuff. So it's something that you look back on now that you're finished. And like I've been in that hall, a million times, and you just are drawn to it. So it's something, that we take great pride in. Like I said previously, I didn't have a dad or an uncle, or anyone that played there previous to us, and it's something I drill in. We have a meeting every year with our players, and it's, if you're willing to do the hard work at this footy club, we will look after you. There was so many other people that came in. The Smiths, Helen, and she's a fantastic lady. Vic Ludwig. There's numerous people that have walked into that footy club and given them everything for 40, 50 years. It's what we stand for. Yeah.
Who's better, you or Iggy?
Oh, look, I'll say Iggy. I think we played in different positions. When I first started, I was a winger, half-forward flanker. I think they were looking at me to replace Noel Long on a wing. Because, he was tinkering towards the end, and then I went away.
That's tough. That people say Noel was the best Long. That's pretty tough.
No, he was, and he is. He's a superstar, Noel. He's got an unbelievable story, and he's another one I like getting in to speak to the kids. Like he's I want to say a 10-time Premiership player, numerous Nichols medals. He's won a best on ground in a grand final, and it took him 3 or 4 years to crack into the senior side. He played over 100 games of B grade footy back in those days. Div 1 now, where you get kids straight out of under 18s who think they should be playing A grade. Someone like Noel Long, exactly. He spent 3-4 years playing the good old-fashioned B grade footy to learn his craft. And I use him as an example all the time. So, but when I was coming through, I played, fullback, centre-half back, ruck. There weren't too many tall kids, as you know, in Darwin sport. So you sort of played along the spine. And then playing seniors, I had a bit of pace when I was younger. They were like, you're going to play on the wing. You're going to take Noel's spot. And I was like, geez. So Tommy Wheater, who was the other winger at the time, was my idol. Like, I'm going to be swapping on the wing with Tommy. But when I came back from Adelaide, they get you in the gym pretty early in Adelaide, and I loved it. I actually really enjoyed going to the gym, and it's something, we don't do too much of here in Darwin with our kids, but I loved it. So when I came back, I had a little bit more size about me, and Mick Athanasia was towards the end. And they were like, well, you're going to have to play centre-half back. And that's where I played, And Iggy was the opposite, I reckon. He started as a back flanker, again, blessed with, speed, courage, everything. And he ended up playing in the forward line towards the end of his career, and I think he's played 340, 360 games, which is unbelievable. That's 20 years of footy at top level. It's a great effort.
So what was it like in those early years? I think you said, was it 1 year under John Taylor?
Yep, 1 year under John.
Or was there a few years?
Well,
I'm really intrigued to. Yeah.
Yeah, so I played. John was the one that gave him my first crack at it. So we had three games when I think me, Brenton, and Peter Bergen were our first year of under 18s. The year after, we played the full season. Peter got drafted to Port Power, so it was me and Brenton. We played the full season of senior footy under John. The year after, won a flag. We beat Waratahs in a grand final. I went off to Adelaide to play a bit of footy. I moved back when Jamie Thomas was our coach. Won a flag with Jamie, and he was a fantastic coach. He was a legend of the SANFL for, for Central Districts out at Elizabeth. And then, we had a bit of a rough patch at Saints. I think a lot of our absolute superstars, team of the century sort of players in the NTFL retired, in Noel, Dennis Dunn, Mick Athanasia, Tommy Wheater, the Christensen brothers, you know, the Perry brothers all started to retire and, you know, get to the end. Brian Stanislaus was a superstar. And we just didn't have that crop of juniors coming through to take their spots. And we struggled, mate. I remember playing in a year where we didn't make the finals for the first time in like 40 years. And it was, you know, we couldn't get people that wanted to play in their seniors. I remember the coach at the time trying to ask under 18 kids to step up, and they didn't want to play. You know, so we were pretty bad. Like, we were terrible. Didn't make finals. I don't think we could find a coach at the time. And then we were lucky enough, I think, the year after, Damien Hale put his hand up. I think he was living down south and came back to the club. And we won 3 grand finals in a row after that. So, yeah, it was pretty good. And I think when Damien was there, he started, you know, I think things happened in cycles up here. There was some good kids coming through, and, you know, it's sort of, and we were lucky enough, to be honest, to score some really good recruits at that time. You know, Peter McFarlane's a once in a generation sort of player. You know, he's a centre half forward that can, you know, take screamers and play in the ruck. Carl Lode was another one that moved up the same time. Yeah, so we had a few recruits that, you know, like, there was no such thing as fly-ins back then. You moved up, you know, they moved up, loved the culture we had at the club, you know, loved the lifestyle of the territory, and, you know, stayed for 10, 15 years. You know, they're still living here now. And it sort of set the scene, I think. And, you know, we've sort of been on the cusp of, you know, playing in flags, winning premierships, you know, the last 15 years.
What was it like in the later part of your career as you become one of those older statesmen at the club compared to when you were younger?
Oh, look, I found it hard, to be honest with you. My body just fell to pieces. Like, yeah, I had, I think, 2 operations on my ankle, 1 on my knee, and I needed 1 in my groin, my tendon. But I wanted to, like most footy players, want to go at your own way. You know, you have this fairy tale of playing in a flag and walking off carrying the Premiership Cup in your last season sort of stuff. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. You know, I think I ended up with 240-odd games. Tried my hardest to get to 250, but I think I know the body didn't let me. And, you know, we're sort of, well, I am, and my brother is, when we get it from our parents, we're sort of, pride plays a big part in our lives. And I call it cheating. If I couldn't train on a Tuesday and Thursday and train my hardest, I didn't think I should be picked to play on a Saturday. And Tuesdays I could barely move on a Tuesday. You know, towards the end of my career, and it was pretty much try your hardest on a Thursday, hope the coach picks you. There's things called anti-inflam started coming into the game towards the end of my career, and I was relying on too many of them to get me through a Tuesday night. Yeah, so it ended, you know, I wanted to play a few more years, but the body didn't let me. I was lucky enough to play the last 2 footy seasons with the Tiwi Bombers. And that was, you know, an experience I really enjoyed, and I look back on, you know, on fond times. You know, my last 2 seasons were with Tiwi. But yeah, the body ended it for me.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to ask about that. What was the reason behind going over to Tiwi?
Yeah, well, I pretty much got the marching orders from Saints. I'd missed out. I played in 5 flags. I lost 3 grand finals in my last couple of years at Saints. I had a knee operation. I tried my heart. I had my meniscus, lateral meniscus, and my knee cleaned out, I reckon, a month before the finals. It just wasn't going too well. I got that done on a Monday, and I played the following Saturday. And it was probably the worst decision of my life. Just the bleeding, it was swelling up. But I knew we had a really good side, and I just didn't want to miss out. It just didn't come good. So I was a leading goal kicker that year, and I didn't get picked in the Premiership, in the grand final team, and they beat, I want to say, Waratahs, and they absolutely smashed them. And I was absolutely dirty on that. The year after, I went, you know, you do pre-season, you do everything you have to do, and we'd gone straight through to the grand final. I was the leading goal kicker for Saints again, and I did a quad, you wouldn't believe this, on a Saturday morning training session the week before the granny. At Pints Oval, and I just remember sitting in the car, my old ute, pretty much in tears, punching the crap out of the steering wheel, because I couldn't believe I did my quad on the last. We were doing goal kicking, like 3-star goal kicking in the last drill, and I did a quad, so I missed out on another flag there, and I just needed to clean my head, so I pretty much retired. And a mentor of mine called Peter Atkinson, who had a lot to do with NT footy back in the day. and he was my player manager when I was, looking at playing AFL. Sort of tapped me on the shoulder and said, look, Tiwi are not struggling, but they need some big bodies. Would you be keen on, having a run with us and maybe doing some coaching? And I jumped at the chance, and they were great times. Like playing with Ross Dungatalum, who I had a bit to do with at Saints. Austin Wanamiri, had a lot to do with at Saints, and it was fantastic. It was a really good time. I went there with no sort of pressure on me. I could just go and play wherever I wanted to play. Towards the end of my career, they'd moved me from the centre half back to full forward, centre half forward at Saints. And it's hard work playing in those positions. When I went to Tiwi, they moved me back into the back line, and I loved it. It was really good. I actually had a couple of games in the ruck. And there was no pressure. It was more about fun. They had a good bunch of young kids, and I was just sort of there to protect them, sort of stuff on the footy field, which I enjoyed. It was good. Yep.
You mentioned that you not getting picked for that grand final side. So correct me if I'm wrong. Were you coaching when Ryan Smith wasn't selected for a grand final recently? Is that correct?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. So
I'm not going to rub anything in, but I just want to I want to ask, because I want to know, what was it like to move in from like a player and having that experience yourself to then as a coach, where you got to do that to someone else who's played so many games himself, who's also at the end of his career. So you know how that feels.
Oh yeah, look, I do. One thing with us is, like I said, we're proud people. Like it's all about the club with us. If I'm not doing a good job, I'll step down. Like there's no issue. I'll never have a bad thing to say about Saints sort of stuff. But it was hard. Me and Ryan go way back. Like I think I was captain when he first came down as this really athletic young ruckman that was a basketballer, and he Aidan Hill brought him down as a mate. And he's been fantastic for the Saints Footy Club. Like he's a Premiership ruckman. He's a Thunder Premiership ruckman. He's a great supporter of the club. Any sort of working bee, if we need volunteers, he's the first one to put his hand up. He sponsors the club. He employs boys that come up here. So Ryan does a fantastic job for the footy club. That was the hard thing, having that conversation with him. To go with that story, like he'd broken like a couple of ribs. I think he hurt his spleen. I didn't see him for 2 weeks on the track, so I was like, okay, he's not going to play. And then the Thursday of the grand final, he comes down at the end of training and says, I'm ready for my fitness test. And I was like, Ryan, everyone knows you've got cracked ribs. Like the worst thing I want is for you to go out there. Like, you can't take injured players in any games, let alone a grand final. And he goes, no, I'll tape my elbow so it looks like my elbow's injured, so they'll attack that and not my ribs. And I was like, Ryan, that's not going to work, mate. And look, there were some tough times after that. Like, I don't think we really spoke for maybe, 2 or 3 months, me and Ryan. He's come on as the Women's Premier League coach now. And yeah, I've got a great relationship with Ryan, and like he's the ultimate, clubman. He's coached my daughter. Is my daughter's first ever, I think, footy coach. So yeah, Ryan's one of those absolute legends you actually need in your football club. I was lucky enough to coach in 3 grand finals. My first one, I had to drop a bloke the week before. Did an absolutely fantastic job on, what was his name? A bloke that played for Nightcliff, an absolute star. Shut him down to pretty much nothing. And just how it works up here with the point system and fly-ins, we had to drop him for the grand final. So I reckon every grand final I've coached, we've played in 3 in the last 5. I've had to drop someone. I suppose a difficult one was Leonard Ferreira, who was another one I had to drop. Local kid coming through the ranks, was doing everything right. Just injuries at the wrong time of the year. And, I remember, giving him the phone call because he didn't make it down to training that night. And it was pretty emotional, like I'd had a lot to do with him. Yeah, you feel for these blokes, but I suppose being in that same situation, it's sort of hardened me up a little bit. Yeah.
What's the difference between coaching a Premiership side and playing in a Premiership side?
Oh, look, totally different. Like I was lucky enough to captain 3 premierships, and when you're on the field, you feel like you can influence the game a lot more. When you're in the coach's box, everything you do is during the week. You get people in and talk to them about how intense the game's going to be. You prepare them the game style, how you want them to play. And then it's pretty much up to the boys. Like once you leave the change room. It's up to them. You can try to tinkle with a few little things, but you feel like, it's out of your hands, and you're really hoping that, the leadership group that you've put in place and the systems you've done over that 6 months is going to get you through. Whereas on the field, when I felt as a captain, you could, put a tackle on or put a big hit on over here, kick a goal. You see it all the time with great players in the AFL. They may influence the game in that 5-10 minutes with something special, where in the coach's box you can't. Like it's a different one. Like I find it really tough, and I find it tough too that you sort of come from that playing background and you're in the box. I always say I'm a fiery Latino sort of thing in the box, and you get a bit passionate. Like you want things to happen for you, and it's tough.
Yeah, well, I want to ask a bit more about the coaching, because so how would you describe your coaching style, and how have you found that transition from playing into coaching? What is it about coaching that you love? Because you've done it for a little while now.
Yeah, like I started coaching, I think, when I was playing footy. It's strange, because I ended up coaching in the Premier League blokes like Jack Long, Ben Rioli, Jack Williams, who I actually coached as under 12s. And that's when I first started, club was looking for some coaches, and I thought, I'll give it a crack. So I started when they were coaching under 12. So it was really interesting, 10 years later, I was coaching him in the Premier League. It sort of gave me an advantage, because it's all about relationships, I reckon, coaching. Like, I'm a big soccer fan. I'm a big Real Madrid fan, Liverpool fan. And, they're not called coaches in the Premier League. They're called managers. It's the easy bit is the Tuesday, Thursday to me. It's the other times is the hard bit. Like you've got marriage breakups, you've got girlfriend breakups, you've got, like some of these young kids, my wife does the cooking for them still, and she brings food to training for them. Getting them into the gate because they don't have money to pay to get in. That's the hard bit. It's a full-time job. Like it really is up here in Darwin. Like the Tuesday, Thursday training, I really enjoy. It's what we do, the banter. It's one thing you miss when you're playing footy, and the stuff around it is the hard bit. But it's all about what I've learned is how the relationships you build with not just say the top 15 players or the top 5 players, but all the way down. That's the hard bit. And things have changed. Like when I was a kid, there was no thing as a mobile phone. Everyone's different now. Like I was really old school where like I just gave face-to-face feedback. Now, like people don't like that. Like you have to text them a message on Messenger because they'd rather be in the comfort of their home or the safety. I've got senior footy. When you're playing senior footy, to me, you're a man sort of thing. You need to talk to my mum. Like I'm like, what? Like you're playing seniors, I'm dealing with your mum. And they're the things I struggle with. It's hard. I've got 2 kids, like I said, that have, they think I'm pretty harsh sometimes. But that's the way it has to be. Like if you're going to be a successful footy club, like I said, it goes back to Mick Athanasiou. We lost 1 game in 2 years, and we had a crisis meeting, and he tore strips off everyone. Like it's things have changed. I'm still working on it. I don't think you could ever be a perfect coach. It's tough up here. Like there isn't too many courses or PDs you can do on coaching. A lot of it's online, which I find, again, I'm 45. I struggle like joining this Zoom meeting today, and you've got to do a coach on it. You know what I mean? So we're lucky, like I said, our kids are away, so we sort of tie in PDs when we travel away. There's a lot of, especially St. Mary's connections out in the AFL and the SANFL. And you just go and send them an email, and hopefully, they don't mind you sitting in and watching how they do things. And that's how I've sort of done it the last couple of years. Xavier Clark at Richmond was a big help to me in my early days as a coach. I was flying down there to see my son, and I'd spend 2 or 3 days just at Punt Road watching them train. And he was fantastic. He'd get you in on the meetings and stuff like that. Any sort of, thing he could copy and paste onto a USB for me was fantastic. I've just come back from Adelaide for that gather round, and Reva, who coached Thunder a couple of years ago, I was lucky enough, to spend a week with Glenelg, and that was fantastic. So anything like that, it's you're always learning, I think. Yeah.
What was your biggest takeaways from those experiences in the big clubs like Richmond?
Yep. Look, I'm always looking at new drills and things to implement. What I found was we're not doing anything different. Like, to be honest, the drills and the exercises, our warm-ups, everything is pretty similar. The only things that change are the intensity of it, that they're going 100 miles an hour from the word go, and the numbers they have. Like at a footy club, there's probably 45 on the track, plus some others, they might have some supplement players or players that they're having a look at. So probably 50 on the track, at NTFL. And look, I'm not embarrassed to say it, Saints, we'd have sometimes from 20 to 25 players, and then you'd have to join in with, your Div 1 players, and you'd probably have 30. And that, your top 5 are really good. And then, your bottom end of your Div 1 are struggling, and then trying to come up with a drill that you can do all together. So that's one thing I found, that what we're doing is not that different, but the intensity and the numbers they have is miles ahead.
I'll tell you a little story. I'd love to get your take on this, about a time that I was down at Buffalo's training. So I went and wanted to spend one season at Buffs. It was their 95th anniversary year, because my great-granddad had played for them back in the 20s. And so I was in this lane. There was this line drill. I think there was about 4 groups, and Damien Zammit was coaching at the time, and he brought down Brenton Toy, and it was a mate of his who he was going to get in to help do some stuff with some drills. And these 4 guys were running off. The ball was getting kicked out, and I had to do something. I can't remember exactly what was happening, but you had to do something. And there was a guy who was a second in line, and I think he kind of went to mop up maybe a spilled ball or something, and he was in front of me. And Brenton came through and absolutely poleaxed this guy and took him out. And then he said, "You pay attention every moment. I don't care if you're at the front of the line, if you're in the drill, you're at the back of the line, you are focused, you're switched on, you pay attention to what's going on." And I went, holy hell, what's going on here? I better switch on. And so I just made sure from then on, I always had the mentality in every club that I ever helped out at that point was like, you always switch on, no matter where you are. If you're training, you're always switched on. That, to me, resembles exactly your experience when you're a young guy coming at the Saints with Brenton.
Yeah, mate, I love Brenton. Like I said, his mum and dad were great influences on me, and, as a young person coming through the ranks. Unfortunately, Brenton, when we were playing footy in Adelaide, hurt his knee when we were playing at Woodville West Torrens. And he sort of played games after that, but he never got back to the heights of what he could have been anything, Brenton. He won an Nabala medal. He was a leading goal kicker in the under-18s, played senior footy, and then unfortunately hurt his knee, and he went along that coaching route. And he's a coach that thinks outside the square a little bit when you're talking to him, and he's a mentor of mine. Early days of game, would catch up with him quite frequently. I'd ask him about drills, and he'd be like, "Mate, I just make them up. Like, here's a board." He was working at NTIS, I think, at the time, and it was unbelievable. He would think outside the square a little bit. Like, what do you want to do with your drill? Like, this is how you need to plan it, and this is how you do it. So I learned a lot from Brenton. Mate, exactly with that intensity. So we had a bloke called Heath Colpert. He came to Darwin, played at Carlton in a great era with Rats, Craig Bradley and all that. Couldn't get into the senior side. We were struggling when he got up here. And the same thing, he came out on the training track, and he'd do these competitive stuff where, we were just going through the motions, and he would knock blokes out at training, literally knock them out with a pad. Like, he'd be running that hard, and like you said, you'd sort of snap out of it very quickly and think, "Oh, hang on a second," like, we'd all be laughing at the bloke that was lying on the ground, and we just didn't want to be like that. And that's the standards, like, unfortunately, you can't replicate that every week up here because of numbers, because of the talent on the track and things like that. Yeah.
What's the main difference that you see between football now and 20 years ago plus?
Yeah. Look, I went to a Hall of Fame night. I reckon when they inducted, it was Nathan Buckley, and he got up there, and I thought, "Man, NTFL's flying, like we're doing really well." And he went up there, and like he got inducted into the Hall of Fame, and he was like, "I went to the footy today. There weren't too many men playing." And I was thinking, "What's he talking about? We're all men, And in his speech, he was going on about, he remembered playing against St. Mary's, and there was Mick Athanasia, Bruno Long, Kedgie Dunn. And when I think of them, they were all 6 foot plus, all 90 to 100 kilos, big men playing. Because I went there today, and he goes, it was sort of like a bit of like circle work. There was all these little whippets running around. That's one thing straight away you notice when you watch. I watch a lot of VFL and I watch a lot of SANFL. it's a really quick running game. It's a lot like soccer, to be honest. The ball goes up and down quite quickly. The teams with the bigger bodies do really well. Waratahs, had a fantastic side last year, and you look at their side, they had some genuine height and strength. Blokes that could move. When you think about, like I always talk about Saints, we've got a shitload of wingers, half forward flankers, half back flankers. All whippets that can run. Whether it be basketball stealing a lot of our good players these days, or rugby union, I don't know what it is, but that's one thing that's definitely changed, is the physicality of it. And, that's a lot to do with the rules too, just, your tackling techniques and things like that. So it's getting quicker. I think you have to be a lot fitter these days to play up here. It's bloody hot. It's getting hotter, I reckon. It's more of a running game, yeah. They're the big changes to me.
So what are you looking forward to this season coming up with Saints?
Oh, look, we've got a really good, like I said, I'm a local boy, come through the ranks. I'm always looking at young talent. I've spent a lot of time working for Thunder and all these sort of things. So I'm always looking at young people. It's youth, the way to go. And what they bring to the table is enthusiasm and speed, and it's NT footy is what you want. Whenever I play a young kid, I don't care if you don't kick 10 goals. We're here to pick us old blokes up, that enthusiasm, speed. I want you to be whipping around and that effort. So we've got a couple of young kids that I'm pretty excited, about in the next couple of years. Look, we've got a bloke called Dylan Land and Nate Paredes that, I think are at the top end of the echelon of footy players up here. They're super fit. Nate's playing at Glenelg at the moment. Dill had a year off, but he's absolutely smashing the running we're doing at Saints at the moment. So he's going to have another fantastic year. So it's always interesting to see how we go. Clubs are, I think, getting a lot better, getting a lot smarter in their recruiting, and spending a lot of money on recruiting also. So I think it's going to be another good season. There was a shitload of ex-AFL players playing in the comp last year, so that's something exciting. See what players are going to be playing up this year, whether it be Gary Ablett again or Eddie Betts, wherever it may be.
Talk about Nate Paredes, just to pump him up for a moment.
Yeah.
You said that he's fit, man. A couple of years ago, so when I was working with Danielle, his partner, with the Crows, like he would come out and do sessions. His high intensity running is the best I've ever seen in the NT. It is incredible. He was running at paces like in these effort sessions that they do in the AFL. Like, he is incredibly fit. So if he's now playing at Glenelg as well and having that exposure, that experience, that fitness level, I am scared for what he's going to do this season running through the midfield.
Oh, look, I rate Nate Paredes up there as, one of the best players to play at Saints. He's won numerous best and fairest. He's a premiership captain now. He's, and you know what he's like. He does everything possible to get himself game ready, whether it be, rehabbing during the day, ice bars, anything. He's the ultimate professional for AFL NT. And he's a really super nice bloke. He's one of those blokes, everyone says it, like, you'd love your daughter to go out with him. Nice bloke. I can't say a bad word about it. He's a great leader. It's always about the team with him, what he can do for the team, whether it be taking everyone out to dinner, catching up with people that played at Saints. So I went down Adelaide, like I said, a couple months ago. I think he organised, 5 or 6 catch-ups with blokes that had played at Saints that I hadn't seen in a while, just, catching up for coffee. He'd have to drive 45 minutes, an hour to get there, but that's just the type of bloke he is. He's coached juniors at Saints, him and Danielle, they've been fantastic for the Saints Footy Club. Unfortunately for him, he was super fit last year, had a slight knee injury, I think, just before Christmas that sort of really slowed him down a little bit. We sort of just, scraped into the finals with him and Dylan. Dylan hurt his knee also, and it really affected the way we wanted to play. 2 prime movers, both with bad knees, and it was bad. But he's playing seniors at Glenelg at the moment. He's doing really well. So he's told me he's back the week of round 1. So we can't wait.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and neither can I. Can't wait to see how this season pans out. Who do you think is going to be the big challenges for you outside of Saints for the Premiership this year?
Oh, yeah, you can't go past last year's Premiers, and that's Waratahs. They've done really well. Their recruiting's been really, really good. Half those players that they had last year are still here. They're going to be, favourites. Southern Districts again, that they were able to recruit. It's a really, tough mix up here on recruiting and playing locals. If you're not winning, people want you to play locals. If you're winning, people want you to play locals. You've got to find that right mix. And both those clubs seem to be doing it really, really well. Look, I work pretty closely with Aaron Motlop. I hope he does really well this year. Cameron Stokes and Buff's a good mate of mine. I hope he does really well this year. They're both, to me, when I think about Buffs and Wanderers are traditional local clubs, with local footy players. And, I hope they do really, really well. They sort of, like Saints, struggle to get 15 locals, Southerners to move up here. So when you're down there, you sort of, who's that kid? He's a local kid playing under 18s. All us three clubs sort of do that, play our kids and stuff. So I hope they do really, really well also.
And I'm sure, I know you'll regret it if you don't say this, but I'll throw this in for you because you said that you're same age as Shannon. I'm sure you hope that Shannon does well at Pints as well. You can't mention Aaron and not mention Shannon. I'm doing you a favour here.
Yeah, no, Shannon, I was totally wrapped for Shannon when he got picked in the AFL Hall of Fame the other night. He's a star. I don't think he gets as much credit as he should. He moved away when, I'm not too sure, but I don't think he finished year 12, Shannon. I think he left before he did year 12. I can't remember him in year 12. I remember him in year 7, 8, 9, 10, and then he disappeared. So I reckon he dropped out, went to Adelaide, got drafted, had an absolutely fantastic, played in the AFL Premiership, I think 8 games in. Played at Melbourne, had an absolutely, if you Google him and you look at his highlights at VFL, he's kicked one of the absolute greatest goals I've ever seen. And he's a genuinely really good guy. I don't think he gets enough credit. I don't think he played, I don't think people saw him in Darwin playing, until the end of his career. What he was able to do in country footy and, VFL is outstanding. And I was sad to see him leave Wanderers and go to Pints. And he's done it, their first ever win was against us at a Pints Oval, which I wasn't happy about. But look, yeah, Shannon's a good mate of mine, and I hope they do well, but not too good. Yeah.
Talking about Shannon, possibly not finishing year 12, how's your kids going with their schooling? I know one's just finished.
Yeah, it was a tough decision for me and the wife back in the day, but like I said, we want our next generation to do better, so we thought we had to get him out of here. So my son attended Xavier College in Kew in Hawthorn from years 9 to 12, graduated last year. He's studying teaching. I don't know why he wants to do that, but he's doing teaching. He's doing it through Deakin out of Geelong. He flies in, flies out. He loves it. He was in Melbourne in that really tough period of COVID. So didn't play too much footy for 2 years, but because he didn't want to come home, because if he came home, you had to quarantine for 14 days out at Howard Springs. So he did that, I think, once when he was 16 to get his license, to get his L's. And the rest of the time, he sort of stayed in Melbourne. So we didn't see too much of him. So in terms of footy development, was a little bit behind, I thought, because he didn't actually play too much. He's been back for a while now, so he's playing senior footy. I'm hoping he moves back to Melbourne soon. He's got that love for Melbourne again. He hated it a couple of years ago because he was there and he couldn't do anything. Couldn't leave the school grounds or anything like that. Now he's back. He loves it. He's good mates with the Davey twins who are playing at Essendon. Tex Wanganeen who's at Essendon. So he's got some really good mates that are, still in Melbourne that he enjoys spending time with. My daughter's at Melbourne Girls Grammar, so she's in year 11. She left when she was in year 9. She originally didn't want to go to boarding school. Xavier did, and she just saw the opportunities he was doing. Every week pre-COVID, they're up in Mount Bullis skiing. They were out at the beach surfing. They were just doing unbelievable camps. The footy that he was playing basketball. That's what she does, and all of a sudden she was like, I want to go to boarding school. So she's been there. She's loving it. She plays for the Melbourne Tigers, rep basketball. Her school, Melbourne Girls, she was a big part of it. She played in the Herald Sun Cup, which is the best high schools in Melbourne, and her team won. So she's doing really well. Yeah, so she got another year. So hopefully she decides to stay down there. I'm hoping, and we'll see what happens.
I know we've had a few personal conversations about boarding school over the years. What would you recommend to a parent who's thinking about boarding school for their kids?
like you, we've worked in the education system in some form up here in the territory. Everyone was telling me, "Oh, you're sending your son away or your kids away because you want them to play AFL." And I was like, "Well, no, not really." My parents won't mind me saying, when they came to Australia, they couldn't read or write English. Mum could speak 8 different languages, Dad could speak 3, but they couldn't speak English, or they can't read. And they wanted better for us, and we just want better for our kids. And I said, look, if he gets drafted, he gets drafted. But if he comes back with a VCE, education, I'm over the moon for it. And that's the tough thing. I think a lot of parents, I like the fact that you want to send your kids away. I encourage it. Anyone that talks to me about it, I'm a real big favour of it. Send them away, the life experiences, the people they meet, the opportunities they get. The opportunities my son's had and my daughter, it's unbelievable. It's I look back and I think, geez, how good's that? The camps they go. I went to Lake Bennett for my camp. We were nowhere. It's unbelievable what they're doing. If you're lucky enough to get a scholarship or whatever it is, it's a lot of money. Otherwise, I'd send them away. And the sport's just an added benefit. The coaching they get. The facilities they're training at. MSAC in Melbourne's an unbelievable precinct, and my daughter trains there 3-4 times a week, and she thinks it's nothing. Every time we go there and watch, I'm just like, holy crap, how good's this place? The gym alone, it's unbelievable. The school ovals are 100 times better than Marara that they're training on. The coaching they're getting. My son was doing athletics, and his athletics coach ran at 2 Olympics. I'm just like, God, you can't get this in Darwin. And it's and I can see it in them. They want to go to trainings now, because if you don't go to training there, you don't play. You just don't get picked. When they're home in Darwin, it's like they're packing their bags the night before, because they know it's training the next day, because they have to get there. It's the disciplines they learn are just totally different to what happens here in school and in sport. My son was back last year to do some work experience, and we took him to CSC. And he was at one of the breaks, he was in the one of the classrooms with me, and he was like, "Dad, these kids would have got suspended in Melbourne if they spoke to what's the go with the headphones? Everyone's wearing headphones, and the phones, they've cleaned that up now, but it was like how they speak to the teachers here, would be kicked out. It's totally different." Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Anthony, I'd like to acknowledge you and your wife for all the work that you do for your own 2 children, as well as all of the St. Mary's family and far beyond. Thank you for your time on the Mind Your Body show. As you've been talking, I've been taking notes. I worded you up beforehand. Are you ready for this 10 and 10?
Yeah, let's do it.
Before I get into it, actually, how can people connect with you and contact you?
Look, I'm around.
Might have some prospective St. Mary's players coming up here.
Look, I'm not real big on social media or anything like that, but yeah, I'm usually down at TIO over Tuesday and Thursday. I'm involved with the Clontarf footy program up here, which helps disadvantaged Indigenous boys come to school. I've been working there for 15 years. So I'm the employment officer there. So I help boys transition from school into meaningful work or tertiary level education. And it's, again, I think, something I really enjoy and helping young boys. I'm, always around town. Happy for anyone to contact me for anything, really. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, let's get into it. Number 1, first thing that comes to mind, giving back.
Everything. Yeah. We've done that from day one, and it's something we've learned from my parents. Yeah. I think I've said it 1,000 times now. My parents come here with nothing, and they've earned everything through hard work and just giving back to the community. Yeah.
Number 2, growing up in the Daly River.
Good memories. Fishing, the baddest thing about it, and I say this story a lot, is we had 10 dogs. We lived right on the river, and 10 dogs every year got taken by a croc. So that was the saddest thing. Dad would come into town and buy a dog. In the last 6 months, a croc would take it. So that was the saddest thing. But good memories, lifelong friends. Just that laid back lifestyle is something, not taking things too seriously is something we've been able to do because of that. Yeah.
Number 3, sport.
Look, hard work, good highs and low lows. Yeah.
Number 4, football versus soccer. Which one's better?
Oh, look, I'm like everyone else, I think, jumped on the Matildas bandwagon. Like, I can't wait till the game's on tonight. I've got a cousin that, played at Real Madrid. My dad's a mad soccer man, so I'm going to go soccer at this point.
Soccer. And so you mentioned before, what were the two teams you go for again?
Yeah, like Real Madrid in Spain, it's our family club, and Liverpool in England. Yeah, I was a massive John Barnes fan and Ian Rush back in the, when I was growing up, the late 80s and early 90s, they were the team.
Which, by the way, I don't even know what AFL team you support. Who do you support in the AFL?
Yeah, the Bombers, unfortunately. It's been, a long suffering relationship with them. Hopefully we can win a couple of games and scrape in to play finals and then go out after one game again, but we'll see how we go.
Number 5, the next generation outperforming, doing better than the next.
Yeah, look, we hope so. I'm trying to put in place some things that if they follow, they should do better than us, whether it be in sport, education, work. Yeah.
Number 6, what does the St. Mary's Football Club mean to you?
Oh, look, it's been a large part of my life. That hall we spoke about earlier, that was, my parents were really strict. They were, like I said, that was probably the only place as kids we were allowed to go to. We had to be home before the lights came on along the street. But the St. Mary's Football Club was a place, we could go to quite regularly. With my parents, it was a safe, place to be when you're a kid.
Number 7, moving into state.
Oh, look, it's a challenge, but I think everyone should, if you've got aspirations on pursuing your sport or pursuing an education or just trying to get better at things, I wouldn't be afraid of not doing it. It's something you look back on, and I look back on it now. We did it tough when I moved down. We having wheat bix for dinner. Because we couldn't cook as kids. Having to work shitty jobs to pay the bills because my parents weren't going to help us out. So we look back on it now and have a bit of a laugh at some of the things we used to do. But they're experiences that I think people should do.
Number 9, meat trays.
Meat trays. Look, I'm an expert, me and the wife, at meat trays at the moment. We do one every Thursday at the St. Mary's Football Club for the lovely bingo ladies. Without them, I don't think there would be any St. Mary's Football Club. And then we do a Friday night at the Breezes, who are one of our major sponsors, the Coleman's Printing family, who are great supporters of the footy club. And we do that. So, it's the last probably 3 years, it's been a major part of my life, actually, the meat trays. Look, they're good fun. You get to meet some people and, lots of people that comment about it. So it's pretty good.
Number 9, coaching.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. I enjoy it a lot. I can't see myself doing it for too much longer. But look, I've loved every minute of it. Again, you meet new people every year that come up, and and even to the point where extended family, we've had mums, dads, uncles come and stay with us. Their sons playing in my footy team, so it's been good. The connections you make are unbelievable. Yeah.
And last question, number 10. This is a question in which I ask everybody: if you could go forward in time or back in time, at which point in time would you go to and why? And with this question, you can come back to now. It's time travel. So you can go forward or back, come back to now, you go to end. Yeah. Where would you go to if you had a time travel machine?
Oh, look, I think I said it earlier. I'd love to go back to when Jared Nation came to my house with a recruiting manager and told me they were going to draft me, and just get him to sign something like a contract early, I reckon. Yeah, and just say, look, I want this done now. I promise. Yeah. That'll be it, I reckon.
I love it. Anthony, thank you so much for your time today on the Mind Your Body Show.
No problems. Thank you.
What's the most overlooked part of running, but the most important? Your mechanics. My new course, Running Mechanics 101, is a 9-module course which will teach you how to run more efficiently and effectively. For free instant access, simply head on over to jacobandre.com.